Yeah, so I really, I want to find out a little bit more, about your journey in, thyroid, particularly your specialization in thyroid care, and what got you into it, and what got you interested in what iodine is doing to the thyroid. So maybe you can share a little bit about your journey.
Sure. So getting into thyroid care, I was a naturopathic physician finishing up training, and this would have been early to mid 1990s. At the time, there was a lot of just diverse ideas about thyroid function between natural medicine and conventional. So there was ideas like body temperature was all you needed for diagnosis, or any amount of medication was fine. And it was kind of odd because before then, there were certainly many examples of like natural treatments or alternative medicine, but it was more so, herbs instead of drugs. There weren't so much challenges to the whole diagnostic criteria, or when a condition was present, or when treatments were warranted. That really started with thyroid disease. And so there's these very different views. And in my clinical exposure early along, I saw that these views sometimes were helpful, but there's also like harm or side effects from that. And I saw the shortcoming to the conventional approaches as well, but it was a real puzzle. And I don't know, I connected with those who were struggling with thyroid disease because I had been through a lot of similar symptoms early in life, from related to cerebral palsy, fatigue and weight issues. And it was getting more prevalent. It's something that the frequency of most versions of it roughly tripled in the first couple decades of my practice. So it was just a real rising concern at the time.
When was that, the first couple of decades?
Between about 1990 and 2014, thyroid cancer, thyroid prescribing, thyroid diagnosis, most of these things roughly tripled.
So you said you had your own health challenges.
Yeah, I was a pretty unhealthy kid. I had seizures, grand mal seizures, they thought to be secondary to cerebral palsy. And I was just really, really obese when I was like 12, and always couldn't do sports, super uncoordinated, and self-conscious about that. So,
Wow.
Health books changed my life and made me kind of want to do the same thing.
That's amazing. You made a transformation. I would have never imagined. So thyroid was a big part of your transformation?
It was something that I really resonated with in my training because it's something that was similar to what I was going through. So for me, lifestyle helped, and what I saw in those with thyroid disease is that they had similar issues, but lifestyle alone wasn't enough. There was something else holding them back. So it made me really want to understand it better.
Okay. So I know one of the focuses you have is iodine. So how did that come to the forefront?
Yeah, funny thing. So for probably the first decade of my practice, it really was not. I was aware of the fact that historically, iodine deficiency was a big driver of thyroid disease. Didn't really appear to be on the map anymore. Then somewhere around the end of the 90s, there was this emergent idea about people needing mega doses of iodine. Actually, a patient of mine, he's someone that I practiced in Arizona. A lot of folks were seasonal. They would go to other places when it was hot. And he was like that. So I'd see him off and on half the year. He came back down one year, and this was this man in his 70s, just flawless health. And suddenly he had toxic nodular goiter. And that was really unusual for his demographic. And so I poked around some more, and he goes, oh yeah, I found out that I was iodine deficient. And soon after I started taking iodine, though, I got this nodule. I'm like, well, why were you tested? How are you tested? So there's this whole idea about people needing mega doses. It was just emerging then. And early along, I saw that, mega doses could be harmful, like they were in his case. And so then the first stage was that I thought little about it at all. Second stage was, oh, wow, a lot of folks are taking too much. This is a problem. And the third stage was that, many people, even if they're not taking massive amounts, a little extra can be an issue. And if they get to a low range, that can reverse the disease.
Okay. I know it's still a prevailing theme that a lot of providers or biohacking people are pushing more and more iodine, taking a lot of iodine. So, and some say, there are different forms of iodine. Maybe some forms are bad for you, some are not. So maybe you can shed some light on, just the iodine controversy.
Yeah, for sure. And that's what it is. The different forms of it, that's a quick thing to dispatch with. So iodine's activity comes from its role as a chemical element. And elements by definition are irreducible, barring like a particle accelerator or something. So whether it's bound with one compound or another, or whether the molecules are bigger or smaller, no relevance whatsoever. Iodine is iodine is iodine, whether it's aqueous or nanoparticles or potassium iodide or whatever, it's the effects correlate with the iodine content. That's a simple one. And as far as the prevalence of the views, yeah, I don't have a sense about whether they're on the rise or not. They're still around for sure. I do hear about that. And it's a really intuitive idea. It's a superficial understanding of how the body works makes it sound really logical. I think about it like keys for a car. If your key's missing, your car does not budge. And now here's the key. Well, your car works like magic. And it's like, oh, that's so cool. And we know better than to think that 100 keys will make your car go 100 times as fast, right? But when it comes to nutrients and hormones, we often think in a linear way. We often think that, if there are circumstances in which too little iodine could cause disease, then everyone with a disease must be a problem of iodine. Well, every car problem is not a problem of keys. And there's a point at where extra keys just get in the way. So what we now know is that nutrients, hormones, things that exist in the body, they always have these parameters. There's always a certain amount the body needs. And too little and too much are both problematic. In some cases, those two are closer together than others. And in some cases, they look a lot alike the other. They can cause the same problems. And iodine is one of the biggest examples of that. Most nutrients, you've got a fair amount of leeway. Vitamin C, if you're getting enough, you're not likely to harm yourself from that. That doesn't happen that much. There's like 1,000-fold range. But iodine, there's three considerations. There's nutritional requirements, there's toxicology, and there's intolerance, three different things. So nutritional requirements are pretty much given based upon body size. There's not a lot of genetic variation on that. It's really just body mass that dictates it. Toxicology is similar. Pretty much anyone above some threshold, given their kidney function, they can't excrete any extra, and it starts to simply damage their organs. Iodine was a common means of suicide back in the 1800s, which is why the bottles had skull and crossbones on them. So yeah, that's toxicology. But then intolerance. So what we now know is that there is a lot of genetic diversity for iodine tolerance. And some people cannot process even slight excesses. And those are the people who are genetically prone towards thyroid disease.
Oh, that's so interesting. So you think it's the excess that tends to cause the disease,
So a lack could, but a lack really doesn't happen in the modern world. We've had 6 documented cases of iodine deficiency in the United States since 1980. And those are people that had minimal gastrointestinal structure left. Most was removed surgically. And they were often on diets that were comprised of only raw produce, like no other foods. So you can get deficient, but it's not easy. So different for kids and adults, but adults, intakes of even like 20 micrograms per day often offset deficiencies. So yes. And we know that the window of disease onset increases above about 200 micrograms per day. That's the threshold where some people can become harmed by it. Not everyone, but some can. And we have pretty strong data saying that the average intake in the US is somewhere around 180 or so micrograms. So the average is safe, but averages are deceiving. We have subpopulations based upon age, ethnicity, gender, of which between 30 or 40% of people are exposed to amounts that are unsafe for some. So yes. And we've seen this whenever a country has fortified iodine in their salt. The US started to do that electively in 1924. In the following decades, the rates of autoimmune thyroid disease increased 26-fold, not percent, fold afterward. Denmark did the same experiment in the year 2000. They tracked their rates of thyroid disease, thyroid diagnoses, thyroid medication requirements. And for 17 years running that it was tracked, the rates went up by about 50% per year. So it's been a pretty classic correlation.